Welcome, one and all, to the NFL Draft Breakdown Podcast, episode 51, talking quarterbacks, rumors, hot takes, and all this weekend's college football action, and the whole crew's back. I'm joined, of course, by my co-host, Justin Higdon, and former co-host, future superstar, and BR1000 extraordinaire, Justice Mosqueda. Justice, how's it going, man?
Good. Just waiting for this election to happen so the whole country burns down or whatever. That's what I've been told. That's what Twitter tells me, and that's what Facebook super tells me that. So just waiting on that one.
People wonder why I'm not on social media anymore. I can't do it, dude. But we're here to talk college football. So
hey, Seth, not to get all technical this early in the show, but this is episode 52, brother.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I can't add, so
the Clay Matthews episode.
We don't want anyone to think that we have an alternate ending to last week's episode 51, which cut off a little bit early. Apologies for that.
But yeah, we're here today hanging out. We're going to talk a little bit about a couple big stories from the college football weekend. And then we're going to get into just a hot take buffet that you, the listeners, and the Twitter have really provided for us. And so we can't pass up opportunities like this when the hot takes are being or people are just getting their hot takes off. So, and then we'll end, as we always do, with a look at the weekend games. But let's start quarterback talk. Buddy of the show, Matt Miller, posted that Luke Falk of Washington State was leaning towards or was likely to, I can't remember the exact wording, to declare for the 2017 NFL Draft, which then prompted Luke Falk and the Washington Cougars to hold a press conference to debunk said rumor. Do we make anything of this? Is that a statement that Falk is not going to leave, or is that just to throw some cold water on it if he's putting feelers out there, Justice?
I don't know. Well, so when guys don't really declare ever unless they're bowl ineligible until December, right? We really don't see guys coming out. I mean, if you're a quarterback who's still playing in the season, what the hell are you supposed to say? You're not gonna come out and be like, "Yeah, I'm coming out." I don't know. Matt was the first person to get the Jared Goff stuff, right? When LA traded up and everyone thought they were gonna get Carson Wentz, I think he was the first person to go. He was the first person to put his name on. No, they're going after Goff, and he got a bunch of backlash to that because there were a couple days, right? After that trade, where people were "Yo, what the hell is going on here? They're getting Wentz, they're getting Goff, they're getting Wentz, they're getting Goff." I think that went back and forth for a while, right?
Yeah, the local LA media, which was apparently not quite plugged in yet, was saying it was for Wentz. And
right.
Matt and I think Ben Albright were two guys that said it was for Goff at that point. But it was very much back and forth at that time. As far as this, I'm with you. I don't think this really – I don't think Matt is I believe that he was told that. And – I believe that Luke Falk maybe is still leaning toward return to Washington State. Maybe at this point, like you said, they're not going to even get the draft advisory advice yet, unless he has some kind of feeling like he's going to be a top 10 pick.
Right, and if it's something like that, that means you're talking agents or something, right? And that's something that programs want to. You want to dead that instantly. So
right. Well, that might explain the press conference, but I don't. I don't know. We can get into this, but I don't see Luke Falk as a top 10 pick. But
right.
The one of the things is, he is a fourth-year junior. He will be 22 in December. He is about to cross 10,000 career passing yards. They're on a 6-game winning streak. He's coming off another 400-yard passing game. And he's kind of built and he's putting up numbers like Jared Goff, which
right.
So I thought that Goff's arm was a little bit better than Falk's. Other people have told me they think Falk's might be a little better. The point being that they're pretty much similar prospects. They're both coming out of those air raid type of systems. So either way, even if Falk's leaning toward returning, I I don't doubt for a second that he's at least considering his placement in this class. Now, I'm not one of these people who thinks this is such a weak class. I think that if Kaiser, Watson, Trubisky, Rudolph, and Mahomes all come out, then you might have Falk coming into in that maybe in that mix of the fourth to sixth quarterback in that mix. But
you know whose name you left off there?
who did I leave off?
Brad Kaya, quarterback one, right? Brad Kaya, quarterback one.
Well, if Kaya declares, he's still going to probably go after Falk. So,
Man.
And I left off my
who thought he was great. Shouts to people who thought Brad Kaya was great, and he's straight Matt Barkley right now. Shouts to you.
I forget who. This is something we don't have to really dwell on, but I forget who it was. Maybe Pro Football Focus, or maybe it was Football Outsider. Somebody had a stat about the projection of college quarterbacks going to pros who have negative rushing yards in college, and Kaya is well in that range. I think Goff was too. He went first overall. So for whatever that's worth, I thought it was worth noting. But again, Falk, if you're talking about all those underclassmen coming out, I think Falk's probably like between the fourth and sixth quarterback, depending on whose list you're looking at. For me, he'd be after all those guys that I listed, probably still before Kaya, but
yeah,
that would put him in like what?
Kaya's not good. Kaya's not good, but I haven't seen Trubisky. But I mean, yeah, I would put him behind those other guys. I haven't seen Trubisky yet. Like that.
I like Trubisky a lot. I think that Kaya, or I'm sorry, I think
Kuiper's QB1. Kuiper's QB1 this week.
Yeah, Trubisky was. That's the way to do it. That's a hot take for this show.
I think Falk's probably looking at day two range, late second to Cody Kessler range as far as draft status right now. And if that's the case, that might sway him to come out. I mean, that's pretty. We've seen it. We've seen a ton of quarterbacks, rookies, get starts, and that puts him in that range of getting starter consideration year one if things kind of pan out the same way next year.
Right, and it's not like he's going to do much next year if he does return. You know what I mean? Like, you're still going to be throwing speed outs in a bear raid system, and you have to hang out in Pullman. So, like, have fun with that.
Right. He's physically, he's just built. He's built like Goff. I mean, you don't expect him to bulk up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's got to be a thing too, right? Where like people were talking about Davis Webb, and like people are talking about Pat Mahomes, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like that whole air raid thing isn't really like that big of a deal. Which I mean, I don't know. Maybe these air raid systems are developing better quarterbacks than before, but I can't really name a bunch of like air raid guys who have succeeded in the NFL. But I mean, Goff just went first overall, so that's not a big hindrance on your evaluation anymore, at least.
Well, no, not a big hindrance on the evaluation. And just a sidebar, I think Mahomes is probably the most physically gifted of that ilk that we've seen coming down the pike in recent years. We know Davis Webb has a big arm, but he's not the athlete that Mahomes is. Mahomes has the big arm and the athleticism. And he's got that kind of that gunslinger mentality, a guy who can extend plays, and that makes him a little bit different than these other guys. But yeah, you're right. The stigma is once Goff goes number one, the stigma is kind of removed, and we have to start considering could a guy like Luke Falk go. I think Luke Easterling put out his for DraftWire put out his top 100, and he had Luke Falk in it. I think at 50 or 51 ahead of Mason Rudolph, if I'm recalling correctly.
What? Wait. All right. Staying on the quarterback. Sorry, I got distracted with that last.
I had the same reaction.
Staying on the quarterbacks. Deshaun Watson played against Florida State this weekend. It was a battle for Deshaun, but he made some great plays in the game to help Clemson win this game. What was your overall takeaway from his day, Justice?
I didn't watch him. I'm going to be totally honest. I didn't see him. I have Deshaun Watson takes, but I don't have it for this specific game.
Well, let's just hear your general takes.
All right.
I still like him. I mean, he's not the guy that played against Bama, but he's still. I think people are losing a little bit of sight of what Deshaun Watson looked like in season last year, because there's like a whole bunch of numbers, about like no, he's still on pace to do what he did last year compared to where he was last year at this point. And I think people kind of lost sight of that with that big Bama game. You know what I mean? Like everyone thought that that's what he was every single game last year, and that just wasn't the case. And we wanted him to be, Deshaun Watson against Bama this year for the entire year, and he's not that. But I don't know. I'm still a pretty like he's not. I've seen some people call him like a second round pick, like relative to quarterback talent in this league, based on the past like 3 or 4 drafts. There's no way he makes it to the second round. Like
No,
that's crazy.
I agree with you. I know Seth, you've had a Russell Wilson comparison heading into the year with Watson. Are you still feeling that same vibe?
Yeah, I still think he has the ability. I don't think he's played as well as we expected, but I've seen the game at times, which is, I think big with young quarterbacks. The thing that we've talked about a lot with the quote unquote scouting of these guys is that you want to see progression. And I think that's where I come up with some small minor issues with Watson is what has his biggest progression been this year from last year. And that's not to say that he hasn't, like Justice said, been just as good as he was last year. But I think the expectation was another step taken forward, right?
Yeah, am I wrong that he's running less, though, this year? Is he still running as much as he did last year?
No, but you also wonder if that's by design by Dabo to kind of take some of the hits off of him because he is that team. I mean, let's be honest. Like, if he's gone, what are they as a contender? They're not. I mean, this is semi Florida State before they got run by Oregon, right? Like, that's the vibe I have with this team.
Right, but I think if you're making the case for what has Deshaun Watson gotten better at this year, maybe not necessarily gotten better at, but the area of his game where he's improved his stock, I think you'd say health, right? Because people forget, like, he had 6 major injuries, like, basically in like a year and a half coming out of high school through his freshman season at Clemson, and he hasn't gotten really dinged up in the past 2 years. So I think that was a pretty big thing for a guy who's mobile and has his frame
kind of thin,
like the RG3. Like, I mean, I thought well, like you look at guys of his ilk, right? Kind of like a gun it downfield type of guy, mobile, kind of came from like one of those systems, right? And the 2 comparisons that I thought were gonna come out, I think I wrote about this in I can't remember if it was in spring or summer, but I was like, if he gets dinged up one more time, the comparisons that he's going to get slapped with are going to be Teddy Bridgewater and Robert Griffin. Like it was just going to be as easy as that, and he hasn't gotten injured yet. I think if you're looking, because he hasn't changed from last year, you know what I mean? No. Like you're I guess if you set the bar higher, right, based off of his Alabama game, he's meeting under those expectations. But as far as being like a prospect and how worried about his projection moving forward you're not. I mean, he shouldn't really be scaring you. I mean, like Jameis Winston was out here like throwing game-changing interceptions like his entire last year, and they still pulled off games last second like Clemson's doing, and he went first overall. So
yeah, Watson, the other thing about Watson is look at how well he's playing late in games. And this is where I think that Jameis Winston, in his last year comparison also works, is where Watson has had a couple games where he's thrown a couple interceptions early and his team's been trailing or in a close game. But he's really played well down the stretch in several games. You can point to last week's game, the Louisville game, and the Auburn game week 1 where he's made clutch plays. And I know we don't want to try and we on this show are not going to try and necessarily quantify clutch plays. Maybe an analytics website might be doing that, but what you can see is just the way he kind of feels the situation in the game. I think situational play with him is a big part of his appeal. If you like that part of him, if you believe in him as a leader, and I think his team does have confidence in him to make those plays down the stretch, And so far, so good. He's making those plays, and Clemson's still sitting pretty for a playoff berth. And the other thing, too, is, I mean, this guy, he's putting up the numbers, and I think people are going to nitpick him about some of his plays down the field. They're saying, and I agree with this to an extent, some of his downfield throws have been spot throws. But I've said this, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I'm not as enamored with his skill players as some other people on Twitter or in the media are. That includes Mike Williams. That includes Wayne Gallman. I like Jordan Leggett. He had a big game this past weekend. I think Renfro, who's I think a true sophomore, has made some clutch catches, but he was hurt for a bit. But you see them feeding Mike Williams, and I'm not sure that really helps. It's not a big difference, like you said, Justice, from last year in terms of his numbers. But he's got this guy back in the offense, and he's trying to force feed it sometimes. And I don't necessarily think Williams is making the plays that I want to see him make.
So I think if you want to tie two things in together, you guys are saying like the lack of rushing attempts and things like that, or like, whatever, just scrambles or rushing attempts. One, that might be a whole thing where it's like, I'm trying to protect myself because I know this check is coming in a couple months, so I better be healthy for this. You know what I mean? And him showing up in clutch moments. I'm looking on ESPN's stat splits, and in games where the final margin is within a touchdown, he has over 3 times as many rushing yards as he does in games that are multiple scores. So like that might be like a Russell Wilson thing where you guys are talking about, right? Because like Russell Wilson doesn't run all the time. I mean, I know he's dinged up right now and he hasn't thrown a touchdown in like a month. But like Russell Wilson is a guy who's putting his body out there on the line when Seattle's up in games. You know what I mean? Like if you go back and watch like that Green Bay Seattle NFC Championship game, like he really didn't start running the ball until the fourth quarter when it was like, all right, now it's crunch time and like we have to go all out and I kind of have to sacrifice my body on this. You know what I mean? So when Clemson's playing these one-score games that are basically elimination games in the regular season, I think we're starting to see that a little bit more with Deshaun Watson. And if he's able to do that, I mean, that's something that you can quantify, you know what I mean? Where it's like, okay, now we need you to step up and now we can like unleash this thing.
Yeah, that's an interesting stat.
The other big news to come out of this week has been Jalen Hurd transferring from Tennessee. And it was it's just an odd, thing all over, because all we heard all offseason was Tennessee was going to take a step. Hurd was one of the reasons why. They have a fantastic defense. Are you a Barnett fan, Justice? I can't remember.
I wasn't heading into this year, and based off of this year, I'm more of a fan. I don't know how he's clearly a first round talent. Like if someone says that he's not a first round talent, that person is just flat out wrong. I don't know if he's like a top 10 guy, but I mean he's obviously like the heart and soul of that Tennessee defense. You could tell like when Barnett isn't on that field, how that defense is just like night and day.
And so to see them go from, what was it, 2 weeks ago before the Bama game?
They were 5-0.
5-0 and ranked number 7 or 8 or 9 in the country. And then the Alabama effect happens and they get their doors blown off. Hurd has been struggling all year. We've talked about it on this podcast ad nauseum. So he's transferring and he's going to apparently be moving to wide receiver or tight end.
Wide receiver, I don't know about that. Tight end makes more sense.
Exactly. I was going to say wide receiver doesn't make sense because he wasn't quick enough really to play running back. So tight end would probably be a nice fit. But 2, do you like the transfer? Why not just move within the system that you're already in?
Well, I think that Hurd, well, I mean, he's leaving the team in the middle of the season. That's right there. That's going to be a huge question mark with him. So not only do you've got a guy who averaged fewer than 4, but he averaged about 4.5 yards per carry in 3 years as Tennessee's main running back. And then this year it was down to 3.7. And I know he was playing through injuries. So that does have give him some points for toughness. Okay, but he also had major ball security problems, and now he's going to quit his team in the middle of the season. And from what most people are saying, there's a disagreement between him and the coaching staff about what kind of offense they were going to play or how he's used. My issue with him, one of my big issues with him, is that he's had middling running back production for such a highly touted guy with a mobile quarterback, which you just don't see. That mobile quarterback usually helps open running lanes. I've heard some excuses for why that might be hurting him, and I just don't buy into that. I just don't think he's a good running back prospect. I think that he actually didn't look too bad catching the ball this year. He had a nice catch. I think it was against Georgia. He had a nice catch down the field and looked to be cruising in for a touchdown, but he let off the gas and got lit up and fumbled as he went into the end zone. So maybe if he kind of just polishes himself as a receiver, this can turn out to be a good move. But right now, the initial reaction is it's an awful move because he's leaving in the middle of a season. His options are limited. He's not going to graduate, so he can't graduate transfer to an FBS school. So he's limited to either transferring down to FCS to play next year or sitting out a year next year. And the whole position switch thing, I don't think it's going to be like that huge of a thing that he's going to need like 5 years to adapt to a new position. But it's still something that is going to be a challenge to him, and he's a guy walking away from a team in the middle of the year. So even his own mom put on Facebook that she didn't like his decision.
I wonder if he just comes out in the draft, honestly. Like, I wonder if he just goes through the combine cycle and everything like that. I'm looking at NFL Draft Scout right now. There's no way this dude's going to be a receiver. It looks like he's hair over 6'2.5", 240. That's probably people are going to say Jordan Reed, right? It's going to be Jordan Reed, Aaron Hernandez, because that's the only people that was
Trey Burton.
Yep. And he's
any Florida guy.
Yeah.
He's projected to run a 4.57. Like, he's not playing receiver. I could promise you that right now.
I mean, and on paper that sounds like Derrick Henry, 6'2.5", 240, 4.57, but he's not Derrick Henry. He's not
Derrick Henry. I mean, didn't he have like a hurdle attempt too that he just he messed up bad? I think I remember he had some run earlier in the year where he tried to hurdle a dude and the dude just straight caught him. I was like, what the hell are you doing?
Well, he's kind of slow to turn the corner. He's slow to get going, and
he was a college back. I mean, you see him and you're like, you know what? Like, it's not. It was one of those things where it's like, yeah, you do your thing in college. I don't really think that you're gonna be much of a pro, though. You know what I mean?
Which is weird because we heard a lot of takes, and this isn't the hot take segment because we don't want to. We've done this before with him. We had takes that he was better than Henry, or that he was going to be. Or that people who were down on him were just box score scouting, and I can't stress enough that is not what happened. He just didn't play very well. He wasn't playing well. Now he walks away from a team midseason, and now he faces either, maybe he does go into the draft, but do you think he gets drafted in that case?
I mean, it'll depend on the combine, right? Like, everything will depend on the combine.
It's going to have to be really, really, really good to counter his poor tape and his walking away from a team in the middle of the year. When you think,
I guess I wasn't factoring that into it. Yeah.
So he's got to completely rebuild here, and I mean, he wasn't kicked off the team, not that we know. Yeah. But he is being classified as kind of a malcontent.
It was after that players meeting, right? It was after that players meeting that they had.
Apparently he was like,
y'all have fun with this.
And they had another guy, Kongbo, who's a freshman, defensive end. He apparently had another guy leaving the team who got talked back into staying.
And then Butch Jones
was like, no.
He tweeted out a picture of hung up cleats, and it's because he lost a game of FIFA.
Oh yeah, one of the worst excuses ever.
Well, here's the thing too: is Jalen Hurts he's a former 5-star recruit. He'll find a job. He'll get in the NFL practice squad no matter what. Like, if you look at 5-star recruits and their ability to end up in the NFL in some way or another, even if it's not as a drafted player, like, it's 100%. Like if you're a 5-star recruit, someone in the NFL is going to be like, all right, well, you know what? We have 90 spots on the roster. It can't hurt us.
Yeah, one thing about Hurd, he's still only 20 years old. He doesn't turn 21, I think, until January. So he has youth on his side. Maybe you do go the route of just going to the NFL, taking your chances as an undrafted free agent and end up on a practice squad at 21 and rebuild your stock that way. It's kind of like some scenarios we've seen in the NBA, right?
Right. Because if he's going down to the FCS level, man, maybe he can get a waiver or something like that. But if he has to go down to the FCS level, I don't see how that's going to help him at all.
If you go down to the FCS, you're going to be expected to completely dominate the competition level, which he didn't have. And there's no indication that he would do that, especially if he's trying to switch positions. I hope this is just a young guy who made an error in judgment and he gets some good guidance down the road and can kind of repair.
Anything else on what kind of transpired this weekend before we get into everybody's favorite, the hot take segment?
No, let's do it.
Let's go.
All right, Justice, you can start us off. Welcome back.
All righty. So as a young Hispanic male and Justin as a Cleveland fan, we should both be offended by this man named Joe Brown, who apparently used to work on the NFL advisory board, who said, another reason why football is better than baseball, ... If visiting team goes up 7, all caps, 0 early in game, comma, home crowd doesn't get demoralized. Like, this dude doesn't understand, like, possessions. We should be infuriated. Yeah, I don't know about this guy. This. Maybe this is why the NFL sucks. It's because of people like this are just out here.
I'm telling you what, the Twitter takes on the NFL are
every game is bad, man. Everything is Satan. Everything is Satan. Close games are Satan. Blowouts are Satan. Everything is bad.
Overtime's bad.
Overtime between two competitive in-division teams in a primetime game, bad. Like, shut up and watch football. Man. Football, I promise you're gonna be fine.
Oh man. Matt Miller was asked, Julius Peppers or a healthy Jabril Peppers or a healthy Miles Jack? And he replied, I take Miles Jack over Jabril Peppers. I would too if we were going with fictitious football players. But based on what they actually do in games, I'm going to go with the guy that produces on the field, and that's Jabril Peppers.
Are we going with special team gunners? Or are we going with actual production on the field?
So, we've talked ad nauseum about Miles Jack, and
how high do we think Jabril Peppers is going to go? Like, I honestly haven't seen enough of him. Like, I just started watching like the DNs from Michigan this past Michigan, so I've been reading Jabril Peppers.
This is my take on Peppers. We've had over the past few years in draft, we've had a few two-way players. And Shaq Thompson, and then we have Miles Jack, and then we have Peppers.
Like Peppers is a 3-way player.
Yeah. Okay. So exactly. So I think Peppers goes higher than those two guys. Bottom line, he's more athletic than Shaq Thompson, and he's more productive and healthier currently than Miles Jack was in his draft year. Jack had those knee questions the whole time, clouding him. So Jack was like a legend to everybody because nobody knew what he was really capable of because he wasn't on the field. So it was just like a lot of imagination into Miles Jack projections. And with Peppers, we have to use less of our imagination. On the other side, he is smaller than those guys. He's probably about 215, 220. But you look at the guy, he's solidly built, and he certainly looks like he can withstand enough snaps to be a valuable player. My guess on where Jabril Peppers gets drafted is not going to be top 5. It's going to be top 2. Somebody asked me, a Browns fan asked me this week if he would be potential number 1 pick. God, no. God, I'm looking at the 11 to 20 range. So basically your second third of the first round, 11 through 20 is where I expect Jabril Peppers, because I think he's going to run in the low 4.4s at somewhere between 215 and 220. a team's going to look at him as a nickel linebacker / box safety. And he's much better in coverage in the short areas than what we saw in Jack. And he makes more tackles for loss, makes more plays. And he does give you that kick return ability, which I don't think is going to be his primary use, but I think he will get an opportunity here and there.
But he could get a Patrick Peterson type role in his first year too, where he gets a chance to return punts on top.
While he learns how to play corner.
He learns how to play.
Well,
a defensive position.
I was gonna say, like, he didn't. Jabril Peppers came out like with all these scouting services and things had him at like a cornerback, right? And then he played safety early on in his Michigan career.
Yeah, but if you look at his tape, if you watch the tape,
right? like I said, I haven't seen. I haven't seen enough of him, and I know he's like a big time name, so I don't want to look like a dumbass out here. I'm just asking questions.
And the thing is, he just doesn't show that he can cover downfield, and that's why he's playing linebacker this year, I think. Because if you look at there's the best example I can give, and I don't like to just use singular examples to demonstrate a point like this, but he's not lining up outside like Jalen Ramsey was occasionally at Florida State. So you have a snapshot of him against Minnesota last year where he's in the slot against the tight end, Brandon Lingen, and he loses him. He just completely loses him down the field. And it's not that he can't keep up with him. Athletically, he's a better player, but he just doesn't have – that's just not part of his game yet. Could he get there? I don't know, but they are running him around at so many different positions. I feel like if you draft him to be a cornerback, he's going to be sitting on ice like Miles Jack is right now while they try to figure out what to do with him. Just play him at linebacker, play him in the box.
So do you think he's going to be a Will? Is that what we think he's going to do? Because Sam's come off the field, and if you're talking about a corner or a nickel corner or a Sam on the field, you're going to put in the nickel corner every single time if you're going to get like 11 personnel or something like that. I think that was one thing that I worried about Darren Lee, right? Because when Darren Lee came out, he played so much in the slot that I worried about him being inside in a nickel situation because he just didn't play that last year, like in his Ohio State career. So it was like you want him to be a nickel linebacker, but nickel linebackers in the NFL play in the box because you have slot corners who are able to hang out with these guys, and a slot corner is always going to be faster than more athletic, better in coverage than a linebacker, and that was always my big worry with Darren Lee. And I haven't seen enough of Darren Lee to see how he's transitioned in the NFL. I know I've seen like redrafts and things where he's basically going as high as he was drafted, so I assume that's going at least net neutral. But that was my concern with him.
I think Darren Lee might be defensively one of the better, comparison type players because this is one thing I've said about Peppers. Ever since I started watching Peppers, which was really over the summer, I just got this vibe about him that he's what people tried to convince me that Miles Jack was. And he's better.
There's been a lot of people who said that too. Like Jeff Risden's been on that. Like he was on that early. You guys were on that early. Like a lot of like every smart person who I follow on Twitter is like Jabril Peppers is crazy, but I just don't end up watching Michigan games on Saturday mornings because I'm like either asleep, hungover, or like they're playing like Purdue or something. I'm like I'm out.
And the interesting thing too is up until last week, he'd done 4 Big Ten games without much production at all on the defensive side. Part of that was
back
because
like a 2-pointer, right? He took back like a conversion or something. Yeah.
And part of that was because they weren't playing anybody. They were just blowing everybody out. They get into a closer game last week. He gets 2 tackles for loss. He gets a sack. He picks up a 2-point and runs it back. I don't know why they tried the 2-point. And he scored a rushing touchdown too. But he hasn't done much in coverage. He hasn't been asked to. He's just basically playing at box. He's just basically playing that linebacker role and blitzing. They're picking spots for blitzing, or they're using him on offense in the return game and saving him on defense against these lesser opponents. So it's going to be interesting to see Peppers down the stretch. And Ohio State, I've talked to Ian Wharton about this. Ohio State's going to be a big game for him because he did not do anything against Ohio State last year.
We had Andy Benoit firing off some just fire takes this week. First off,
he's from Idaho. You can't trust him.
First off, Derek Carr's not very good, or something to that effect. I don't remember what the exact thing is. I'm pretty sure Soley got a hold of his Twitter account and wrote that story. He ghost wrote that story.
He said he's maybe the 20th best quarterback in the league.
The second best one, or the second one though, was spot on. Fantastic analysis. Everybody go follow Andy Benoit, because when he was asked who the best young quarterback in the NFL is, he without hesitation answered Carson Xavier Wentz. And let's be honest, that's accurate. So we have, you know, the hot and cold of Andy Benoit. The Derek Carr is the 20th best quarterback in the NFL, but we get the accurate statement about Carson Wentz being the best young quarterback in the NFL. So I mean, I see where he's coming from. No, I'm just kidding. The Wentz one is interesting too. Even myself, unabashed Wentz fan, I don't know if I'm taking him over Jameis Winston. Oh wait, no, I'm not taking him over Jameis Winston. I'm not taking him. I don't even know if I'd take him completely over Mariota.
Are we sure Jameis is good? Like how sure are we that Jameis is good? Because that dude throws costly turnovers. I think that Eli Manning comparison, I think that's probably going to be the one that sticks. Like that's how his career is going to go. Like it's going to be like he ends up in the playoffs, and every once in a while he's going to get hot. But I don't think that dude's going to be like a consistent. We're going to be in the playoffs leading quarterback in his career.
I do think we have to measure it though. I mean, one of the things I was going to mention with this take, with Benoit's take, is just like everybody expects quarterbacks. It seems like analysts these days expect quarterbacks to be good or perfect or bad game in and game out. And it's just not how quarterbacking tends to work. There's very few guys who operate like that. We have to remember Winston's in his second year. Derek Carr, in his third year? Mm-hmm. And Bortles is the one who really looks like he's regressed, because you see he's just figuring a way out of Jacksonville to Arizona. It's a very intelligent that's a dangerous game.
He's pulling the rookie Favre.
Yeah. But we also see Wentz and Prescott and Cody Kessler having hot streaks early. And then there's some indication maybe that people are starting to figure guys like Wentz and Prescott out early. And I'm a Browns fan. I don't expect Cody Kessler to really become anything more than like a Colt McCoy type down the road. So I'm so happy you guys are going to get the first pick and lean on Cody Kessler. It's going to be such an exciting time. Yeah, I mean, sidebar, if you look at the mock drafts, the Browns are going to take 2 defensive players in the first round and ignore quarterback for 5 picks. But anyways, maybe Jameis is maybe we were too high on him. Maybe we on the show were too high on him, and the Pro Football Focus, who ripped him to shreds, was right. Maybe that's true, but I just don't think. I think there's a lot. Like their number 2 receiver right now is Adam Humphries. Their tight end is Cameron Brate. And they're not New England Patriots. They've had 5 running backs injured. There's a lot going on with that team that goes beyond. And their defense sucks. And they switched coaches after 1 year. Because they thought Dirk Koetter was the answer.
To lock it down. They did what Detroit should have done, where they're like, give the offensive coordinator the head coaching job. Do not let that man leave out this door.
You're talking about Jim Bob Cooter?
Jim Bob Cooter. That's my guy. I write his name every single week in my gambling call. Every single week.
But yeah, I mean, I don't like the whole thing with Winston is this to me is that he's a guy that Justice, I think you hit on it. He's a high variance player. So his highs are going to be just ridiculous, and his lows are going to be these 4 turnover games. But I also think he's a guy that needs, like Justin just said, more than just Mike Evans. And you look at his surroundings, and it's not like he's got any. I wouldn't say he has any talent around him, like outside of Mike Evans. So
right, I think that's clearly going to get better, because right now they kind of hose themselves by. They're paying Vincent Jackson a lot of money to basically not do anything in 2 years. You know what I mean?
You figure they were leaning on Vincent Jackson and Austin Safari and Jenkins this year. Neither of those guys are on the active roster.
Why At some point, Tampa has to realize where they're kind of located and be like, Austin Seferian-Jenkins, Tampa, Florida. That wasn't going to work. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, man, we got to play this one real safe.
Well, here's a question for you guys. I mean, we see this with Wentz the other day. He throws like 50 passes for 200 yards. And
Great game.
And everyone, and all of a sudden, everyone's like, he doesn't have weapons. He doesn't have a line. All right, so they're Lane Johnson suspended. We know that. They have Nelson Aguilar, who was a first-round pick. He's not turning out. They have DGB, who was a second-round pick, who they got to trade. He's not panning out.
Some people's wide receiver one.
In that draft, and
Jordan
then
Matthews, the next
Jordan Matthews.
Jordy Nelson.
They
Josh
have
Hunt out here with the heater.
They have former first-round pick Ryan Matthews. They have Darren Sproles. My point is actually that Carson Wentz, even if you hate his weapons, he's got better weapons right now than Jameis Winston, and people are just going straight to he's bad. Is it? I know it's probably because he's in his second year, but he's probably still younger than Wentz, or at least the same age, because Wentz came out as a senior. And Winston came out as a redshirt sophomore. So
I think I don't think Jameis is bad. I don't think they should cut ties. He's not close to the Bortles situation.
If he's cutting ties, if they're cutting ties. Cleveland can sign him and forget about
trade Bortles and Winston to Arizona. We'll have a quarterback competition.
It's not like that. Like, you look at the situation in Jacksonville, it's like, oh, you guys might have to need to find a quarterback. Like, I still think Jameis is gonna hang around Tampa Bay. Like, it's not a situation where it's like, oh, we got to replace this dude. It's like, oh, I just think conversations about should Mariota have gone first overall? Like, I think that is a conversation that's going to happen.
If you'd have asked me 4 weeks ago, I probably would have said no. And then he goes on a streak where he's playing really well.
But then Marcus Mariota has two running backs who I think right now are top 15 in the NFL in yards per carry, and that's when they're running against 8-man boxes.
And he's got an offensive line led by Jack Conklin, who
exactly
hated.
God damn it! Him being good negates me just bashing Eric Flowers every single week.
Well, so this actually can lead into one of the hottest takes I saw this week. If you guys are ready for it,
let's do this.
Mike Clay at Mike Clay NFL. He was replying in a thread. It started about Jamie Collins. Jamie Collins, the linebacker, was traded from New England to Cleveland for a conditional third-round compensatory pick. It might turn into a regular fourth-round pick if Cleveland doesn't get that pick, that compensatory pick. But anyways, Mike Clay's original tweet was something about PFF having Jamie Collins as their 9th ranked linebacker. And he was replying to one of his followers, presumably, and he says, if I had a choice of Belichick or the PFF staff to run my front office, I'm taking the latter, and I love BB. So let me be clear. He is saying that if he had a choice between Bill Belichick and Pro Football Focus staff to run a front office, I'm guessing of an NFL team, even though he's a fantasy guy, he's taking Pro Football Focus over Bill Belichick, despite his love for Belichick. Pro Football Focus, hey, they love Jack Conklin, and they still do. So is he onto something? I'm holding back. Is he onto something?
Stephen Douglas from The Big Lead wrote an article that is dated November 2nd. So this happened yesterday. Goddamn this site and autoplay videos. All right. I can hear myself again. Stephen Douglas, November 2nd, wrote on The Big Lead. The article is titled, Bill Belichick should be fired if the Patriots want to salvage their season.
Oh my gosh. So are these guys in cahoots?
Bro, there were people who tweeted out because they're okay, so one of it, part of it's the Michael Lombardi thing, right? Because Michael Lombardi's part of the meeting now. He was the general manager in Cleveland, and he worked with the Patriots, right? And he was there when Jamie Collins was there, and he got on Bill Simmons' podcast, and he got on
and just to break in real quick, Michael Lombardi, when he was with Cleveland in 2013, was said to be a big fan. Their front office was said to be a big fan of Jamie Collins.
Right, and he went on like I said, he went on Simmons' podcast and he went on with Skip Bayless on what is it called, The Undisputed, on Fox Sports 1, which is basically like their
First take.
yeah, it's their version of First Take basically. And he went on and he said a bunch of things. He was basically like, "Yo, Jimmy Collins isn't as good as you think, and like he's been playing bad this year." I believe Shasta Bleacher Report, our NFL 1000. I think we had him as the number one linebacker in whatever category we have him in, and PFF had him like top 10 or something like that.
Yeah, number 9.
So we had like a civil war on Twitter, basically, where people just firing takes off each other. And I saw someone, I can't remember who it is, and I can't find the damn tweet, but someone was like, "Bill Belichick's only won one championship in the past decade. Like Tom Coughlin has more than him and got fired last year." I was like, what the fuck are we talking about?
Hey, okay, so New England is going to fire Belichick.
Hey, when you got Josh McDaniels in the chamber, man, sometimes you just got to let that thing blow.
And Tampa Bay is going to let go of Jameis Winston. I see the salvation in the desert, fellows. Just come to Arizona. I love Bruce Arians, don't get me wrong, but I mean, like, let's be honest.
Look, Gronk gets banged up one more time. You bring his ass back home.
Right. I mean, we're talking like, oh,
yo soy fiesta.
Yeah.
Here's the thing I don't understand about people at all, right? Like one, New England's the best team in the NFL. Like, probably not even
by far.
Probably not even close.
Are like kind of close. No one else is near as close as them. Like, if you're
Tom Brady's a legit NFL MVP contender after being suspended for 4 games, and they were still winning with Jimmy Garoppolo and Jacoby Brissett.
And so, but here's the other thing. Like, Justin and I can attest to this. Justice is a spoiled Green Bay fan, but
I'm 4-3.
But you cheer for a team that legitimately makes the playoffs every single year.
My team has as many wins as both of your teams combined, I believe, or more.
Actually, has more wins than both of our teams.
Yeah, it has more wins, and this is an off year. Yeah,
but and my team has a tie, so suck on that.
But I root for the Ducks, though.
Right, that's what you get.
Poor little Ducks.
Unfortunate.
But you know, I think these people that get these takes off forget how like the NFL works, right? That New England is not just the best team this year, but they've legitimately been a Super Bowl contender for 17 years now, 16 years now. Meanwhile, every other team in the NFL has had like 17,000 head coaches. So, I mean, like, Cleveland's had 42 quarterbacks and 16 head coaches in those 16 years.
Cleveland is actually on their 5th quarter. I mean, they've gone through 5 quarterbacks just this year. So, I mean,
good God.
As far as front office personnel, they're changing it year in and year out. Now, some people, I saw some replies to Mike Clay's tweet going back to that, where he says if you had the choice between Belichick and the PFF staff. So somebody actually replied to him. So basically, they're saying the choice between Bill Belichick and Cleveland's front office. And I do not think emphatically that Cleveland's front office is simply using PFF to run their drafts.
Well,
but I get what they mean. They're talking about analytics versus
They got Football Outsiders guys in there too. You got to remember that.
Which Football Outsiders? I think it was Aaron Schatz of Football Outsiders. She tweeted something. I don't have the tweet exactly to read, but I can paraphrase. It was something like Football Outsiders. Our new motto is the analytics site that doesn't claim to be better than Bill Belichick. In fairness, PFF did not claim to be Bill Belichick or better. This was Mike Clay, who is with I think. Is he with ESPN right now, doing fantasy stuff for ESPN? Yeah. He's no longer with PFF. He just used to work for them. And so part of this is a guy jockeying for his own guys. But, I mean, that's a super bold take. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm not going to sit here and nitpick PFF's college rankings. We actually talked about that on the show last week. If you're interested in that, we talked about their quarterback rankings on last week's show. But they've had just they've had some significant draft misses to the point where they've hyped guys. Gary Peters, as good as Marcus Peters comes to mind, Gary Peters goes undrafted, and Marcus Peters is I think leading the league in interceptions. That's one example.
Marcus Peters out here looking like young Charles Woodson.
Again, they've had their hits too. I mean, they've got some things right, and they got some things wrong. But this is not meant to bang on PFF. Although sometimes that's fun. It's fun. And we can bang on VR 1000 too with Justice in attendance tonight.
You can, but not my rankings. My rankings are flawless. So y'all have a field day with everyone else. So.
But and of course, we'll bang on our own when appropriate too. So, but this was just a take to end all takes this week, and but hopefully we have some more.
That was a good one though. You got any more, Justice?
I want to bring back an old take. Okay. Pete Prisco said before the season that Dante Fowler was easily going to get 10 sacks this year, and he has one start. He has a single start. He has one more start than me, and Vic Beasley's about to get a 10-sack season after everyone on Draft Twitter declared him a bust because he just led his team in sacks as a rookie with a torn labrum.
Was Pete down on Beasley?
I have no. I don't know if he is though. If he is though, we're taking screenshots, tweets. We're posting those up.
Search those. If you're listening, search Pete Prisco, Vic Beasley, and then at Jumosq, JUMOSQ, at AFC2 2 NSC, or at SCoxFB.
The thing is, he's gonna click on my Twitter profile when he sees people tag me into things, and he's just gonna see followed by Hank Jones and just block my ass instantly. It's just get this kid out of the paint.
And we're Pete Prisco fans here. I like Pete.
He's super good on the radio. Like anything that he has to like, I don't know. He's really good on the radio. He's a lot like Bomani, where like those guys are way better on the radio than they are as like tweeters.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's 100% true.
I mean, but as long as he's not comparing Miles Jack to a faster Ray Lewis, we'll be okay.
Oh wait, he did that.
But so.
Well, he also said the Packers were going 15-1, but the one loss that they were going to have was against Jacksonville.
Oh my gosh!
Nice.
We're sorry, Pete. Hey, I got another one. From our friend of the show at Jeff Risden. This was the other night. Western Michigan was playing, and he said Corey Davis, wide receiver 1, most consistent in all phases in this class. Won't be splashiest from week to week. Bigger, top end, faster Marvin Jones. I don't know if you guys have watched any MAC football. I actually
I watch my Michigan or my Western Michigan Broncos, but I watch it for their right tackle because their right tackle might be the best tackle in college football.
Yeah, interesting because
I'm not sure he's not.
That's interesting because Jim Coburn, who's at Jim Metrics, he does a lot of work with a lot of historic analysis of guys' athletic profiles. He actually had their tackle, I believe his last name's Moten, right? He had him ranked as a backup after I've seen him getting a lot of hype. But back to Jeff's tweet, Corey Davis, wide receiver 1. I respect Jeff a ton. He's a good friend of mine. And, I think this speaks more to the fact that we don't have a definitive, like a really clear-cut big wide receiver 1. And in some ways that's similar to last year where we had Doxson and Michael Thomas and Treadwell. And it turns out we probably should have Michael Thomas number 1 the whole time. Jeff, I know, has seen Corey Davis play in person several times this year. He's seen him, I think, 4 or 5 times. He's been in attendance at the Western Michigan games. So there is something to be said about seeing a player live. So the one thing I will say about this is, like, I know that Mike Williams is not wide receiver 1. I know that in my heart. I'm not going to put Mike Williams as wide receiver 1. If you're looking for a big wide receiver who can make the plays that you expect out of a big wide receiver. Right now, I would lean Cortland Sutton from SMU. He reminds me of Josh Gordon. I think I mentioned that last week. He reminds me of Josh Gordon as a prospect in terms of size, build, the stride, and the way he screens off defenders. And he might actually be better at fighting off those jump balls. Corey Davis is a big guy who had a huge game the other day. It would be so crazy if like Eric Fisher levels of crazy if a MAC receiver ends up being wide receiver 1 in this class.
Well, like the thing, I think you have a point in this wide receiver class not being as great as we thought. I'm looking through NFL Draft Scouts rankings of their junior class, right? And usually you don't see. I mean, other than Corey Davis, like, are we really even seeing like maybe like D.D. Westbrook, right? We aren't really seeing like a top 100 wide receiver coming out of the senior class. So I started looking down the junior class. They have one receiver in their top 13 who is projected to run faster 40 time than a 4.49.
Are you talking about Ross, John Ross?
Yeah, it's John Ross, and he's like 5'11", and I don't even know if he's gonna hit that. You know what I mean? Like he's kind of he's listed at 5'10" and 3/4 there. So
and I'm a John Ross guy because as everyone knows, I liked Fuller, Will Fuller last year as a second round guy. He ended up going in the first round because of his speed. I understand the issues with his hands, and he's had 5 drops this year officially. But
as many as that, like Mike Evans guy has,
who had a phenomenal one-handed catch tonight. If anybody saw that, but Ross is rumored to be a 4.3 guy, maybe even faster.
He is faster than that. I mean, I end up catching a lot of those Washington games because I'm out here out west, and he just torched the shit out of. Can't say that word against Oregon. And that dude's really fast, and I want him to declare because if he comes back another year at Washington, they're just gonna beat him by 70 points again.
Ross is a redshirt junior, and he almost has to declare because of his past knee injury issues. He's had a meniscus injury, he's had an ACL injury, so right now looks healthy, running fast, making plays, scoring a lot of touchdowns. Ross has to come out, in my opinion. He's going to be people's wide receiver 1 because people are gravitating back towards speed over size. But back to Corey Davis. Is Corey Davis? Let's put it this way: is Corey Davis a first-round wide receiver in this class, or are there multiple first-round receivers in this class? At this point, my leaning is really if Ross does run a sub 4.3, he's probably going to be a first-rounder. I could see Curtis Samuel as a first-round pick because of his ability out of the slot, and he's going to time really fast too. And then maybe Sutton, but I think he's going to be closer to like a 4.55, 4.6 guy at his size. But we saw Kelvin Benjamin get into the first round with size and 4.6 speed. So is this a deep enough class for Corey Davis to get into the first round?
I don't think so because I still think Mike Williams is going to be a first-round pick. I haven't seen enough of Juju
He might
Smith.
be, but it's going to be a mistake.
Right. And I don't know about Juju Smith. I legit haven't, like, people are talking about that Darnold guy out of USC, and I have never seen him play. Like, I haven't seen a USC game since I fell asleep after the first quarter of Bama USC and woke up and was like, what the hell happened here? This was looking like it was going to be a lot more competitive than this. But
Right.
like a guy like James Washington out of Oklahoma State, I think he's going to end up being a riser. That guy's good. I end up watching a lot of Oklahoma State because I kind of put my name out there for like Mason Rudolph QB3 type stuff. I mean, I still haven't seen Trubisky, so I don't know how good he is. But like Mason Rudolph, like if you're looking at a guy who's going to be a vertical passer, I think Mason Rudolph. He's not going to be like a top 10 pick type of guy, but if you want like a vertical passer and you're like one of those playoff teams who wants to like develop a quarterback behind an aging star, I don't know, maybe like Arizona Cardinals. Like that's the guy that you're looking at. That's the guy that you're looking at, I think. And James Washington does something every damn game where you're like, how the hell did this happen?
The problem with Washington is he's like 6 foot, 195, 200, and he's going to run like a 4.55. So he has nothing physically.
He might be a little faster than that.
Okay, so let's say he runs a 4.5. He's just not going. He's not going to blow away the combine. But we have seen receivers in the past. My problem with receivers is always when you look at that athletic profile, there are a lot of guys like that. Now, that being said, then you have to watch them play, and you have to look at their production. And Washington's tape and his production are really good. I agree with you. I like Rudolph too, and I think he's been efficient. And it was Jinx tweeted me on Saturday. We were both watching Rudolph play, and Jinx put it well. He's an efficient guy who can also push the ball down the field. It's kind of rare.
He takes it. He takes his shots, and the thing is, so I wrote this piece about Mason Rudolph a couple weeks ago, I want to say. And the thing about Mason Rudolph is, if you look at him statistically, you're like, wow, he took an amazing jump this year, right? But if you look at touchdown, so if you look at who was taking the red zone reps last year, J.W. Walsh basically was the red zone quarterback because he had the ability to run better. And he ended up stealing like – he's got a mullet, man. That dude's got it all together. Business in the front, party in the back, all that. But so like J.W. Walsh basically like stole 20 touchdowns off of his touchdown turnover ratio, basically. Yeah. So like this Mason Rudolph like breakout isn't necessarily like as much of a breakout as we think. Like he's kind of been this dude for 2 years. It's just he's now getting the red zone reps.
I like Mason Rudolph. I told the Cardinals fans about him the other day.
We actually did an article about him over the summer. Yeah, talking about him as a dark horse, kind of late riser, Paxton Lynch type of first rounder. So
yeah, see that's not a bad range. Like I think like right around 20 is where you're gonna start see teams like think about it.
And Rudolph's not that athletic. He's not that.
14 is gonna be too high.
14 is not too high for Mitch Trubisky.
Y'all tell me about Mitch Trubisky.
Trubisky's an athletic guy. He's also big, 6'3", 220, but he looks bigger. I mean, he looks like he'd be 230. He's pretty built. He just has a quick release. He's got a strong arm. He's got one of the stronger arms in the class. He's a good running quarterback. He's so accurate. I've been so impressed with his accuracy. I think the knock on Mitch Trubisky is that he hasn't started that many games. But if I compare him to their quarterback last year, I would say that he probably should have been starting. But I understand why teams stick with the senior quarterback, and the leadership aspect of that goes along with the guys in the locker room. So you don't make a change when you have a guy who, in Marquise Williams last year, who was like one of UNC's. Yeah, he's like one of their most prolific passers in history. I'm not trying to knock him. I'm just saying that Trubisky's a better player. And I think in some ways, I think the hype's kind of gone overboard when we look at him being listed as a QB1 over Kaiser, over Watson. I'm not sure that he has the track record for us to say that yet. But I could see people making that. One of the things I talk about a lot is Hugh Jackson saying that one of the most important things to him were getting the ball out quickly and being accurate with the ball, and that's why he liked Kessler. And I kind of disagreed with him on the accuracy, but if you go back and look at the type of passes that he's trying to run, then it makes more sense. And Trubisky's not throwing the ball downfield a ton for UNC, but when he does, he's on target, and it's impressive. Now, that being said, he does have good receiving core there too. So, but I don't see those guys working super hard to adjust to bad throws by him.
So, the way you explain Trubisky, so he's like a 6'3" guy, kind of mobile.
He's like a 4'6" guy. He reminds me of Carr, actually.
I was gonna say Ryan Tannehill. The way you were explaining him, like that sounded like Ryan Tannehill.
It's more accurate.
Derek Carr makes sense.
Carr's the guy. He reminds me of.
Carr,
he's
like,
bigger.
Carr could sling it downfield. Like,
he doesn't have the arm Carr does, but he's bigger body type. I think he's more, like Seth said, I think he's more accurate than Tannehill.
Okay.
And he wasn't playing receiver. He was still playing quarterback last year. And when he came in, he was accurate then too. It's just that he wasn't starting.
All right, guys, real quick, what games are you going to be watching this weekend? Justice?
Let me look up the games. LSU and Alabama are playing, right? I'm under the impression that LSU and Alabama are playing.
That's correct. That's a primetime game.
I'm 100% going to be watching that game. I can promise you. That's the primetime game?
Yeah, primetime.
what's your take on Jonathan Allen, real quick? Because we made fun of him going number 1 overall, being compared to
Ndamukong Suh,
Suh and J.J. Watt in less than a week.
Dude. No, he's not that. And like the vine is super cool. And like you can point to that vine and be like, that's one of the 10 most amazing things I've ever seen anyone do on a football field. And he's not that guy. Like as a pass rusher, he's winning on like push pulls and things like that. You know what I mean? Like he's not really like, I'm gonna run around this type of guy and like bend the entire time. I don't think he's gonna be a 3-tech in the NFL. Like seeing him linked to Ndamukong Suh is legitimately like mind numbing. Because like,
but if he's not a 3-tech, then what is he?
He's going to end up being like an Adrian Claiborne, like Kerry Hyder type of guy early on. Like, I think that's who he's going to end up being. And I think
that's not like worth a first-round pick. I mean, number one pick.
No. He's not worth the number 1 pick. No, you can miss me with that. I don't even know if he's going to be a top 10 pick, but he's going to be a first-round pick. Like a guy that young who's doing things like that at that level, I think he's going to be a first-round pick easy, especially when he came into this season being everyone's number 1 rated senior. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way he's not going to be a first-round pick. But as a top dude, if someone takes him in the top 5, they're messing up.
So coming back was a smart move for him because he himself said he was given a day 2 grade from the advisory committee. It sounds like he's a no-brainer first round. I think that's kind of what we said last week. But no, number 1 overall is it's crazy to me.
That's nuts. That's people aren't doing their jobs right.
You've got the matchup here too. You've got Fournette going against this Alabama front 7, and Fournette last year 19 carries, 31 yards against these same guys a year younger, and they also had Reggie Ragland in there last year. So this is a big game, I think, for Fournette because PFF was here's a little rag on PFF. They were basically saying that Fournette against Ole Miss was that 2 weeks ago. Rushed for the easiest 284 yards that you can imagine, apparently. I think the takes are kind of too far in both directions on Fournette. I see him in mock drafts as the 4th overall pick, and I think that's nuts. I don't think he's as good as Ezekiel Elliott. And he's probably more in the range. I think Fournette's probably more in the range of where Henry went, which is early 2nd round. And that means he might be late 1st round because he's probably going to run a faster 40.
Yeah, no. Yeah, like his combines are going to like reaffirm basically whatever you want to see in Leonard Fournette. If you watch that if you're going to be able to see that combine, you're going to be able to rationalize whatever you want. I think he's going to be really – dude, how different is he in college than Trent Richardson?
He's not much different. I mean,
I think they're similar, and I don't think that's necessarily a knock on Leonard Fournette.
Fournette's probably better because he's bigger. And he's got the same level of athleticism, but is he? He's not on the level of performance as Zeke, and we see how LSU can succeed.
Well, I think if there was a redraft today, how high does Zeke go?
How high does Zeke go?
Second.
Bosa goes 1, right?
Who?
Dak.
Right.
Dak and Bosa go 1. They share it. They share it and both hold out.
No, I mean I think because it is the Rams, so it's probably Wentz 1. Who's 2? The Eagles. I don't know.
Well, it would have been Cleveland if there was no trade, and Bosa would look nice there.
I think those are the top. I think that, like it's probably Bosa, Wentz, Dak, Zeke in any order, and you can rationalize any of those picks in the top 4.
Yeah,
and Jalen's been lights out too.
Yeah. He's a corner. You miss me with taking corners that high. You can find corners. As long as you don't drop the short corner, you're going to be fine like most of the time.
Well, and it's true, too, because you look at it like as good as Jalen has been this year, and he's been really freaking good.
Jeff Schwartz says he doesn't respect the game, so like you got to knock some points off of that.
But more importantly, it hasn't really made the Jaguars good or like even better. Like
he's a corner. He's a corner.
That's what I'm saying. Like
it's a low impact position. I have a follower, Luke, who we were talking about the Browns and what you do with the number 1 pick, and he made a great point. I thought he said you're either taking quarterback, you're taking pass rusher, or you're taking franchise left tackle, and it kind of in that order. And So if you have the number one pick, you're not taking a cornerback, you're not taking a running back, you're not taking a receiver. That made sense to me. You don't want to speak in absolutes, but those are the positions that are going to be impactful.
You could talk me into any skill player on offense, like if he's good enough.
We could talk you into receiver or running back at number one?
Yeah, I think it depends, right? Like if it's a guy like Zeke, everyone knew Zeke was crazy coming out. You know what I mean? Like if you didn't
Not
need
everyone, not everyone. We have some takes that we read.
We get some stragglers. But I think you can, and then like a receiver in like very rare cases.
Yeah, it's hard for me to remember receivers going number one. Keyshawn Johnson,
I was gonna
Irving
say
Fryer. You have to go back a long way.
But like you could talk me into a guy like Calvin. Like a guy like Calvin, you probably could have convinced me to that.
Julio probably, but I mean, like those guys and AJ Green were in the greatest draft class of all time, maybe
the best draft classes ever. Like
and
I think
have a guy like that.
Half of the Pro Bowls since that 2011 class at like pass rushing positions has come from guys who were drafted from that class. Like Ryan Kerrigan can't get a damn Pro Bowl, and that dude gets 8 sacks a year, and no one even talks about him because how deep that damn draft class is.
And that's why you have, if you're looking at this class objectively, I think the number one pick is going to be a quarterback. I think it's going to be Kaiser, maybe Watson.
Kaiser's not that different from like Jameis. Like I really don't see that big of a difference between Jameis's last year and like what Kaiser's doing. Like
he's a better runner too. He's a more athletic guy.
Well, I worry about that because Notre Dame does not give a damn about that guy's health because they will run him dead into the middle of a defense, and they'll be like, "Hey, if that center misses a block against that one tech, that's teeth."
But I think you're a first overall pick. If he comes out, you're looking at it's probably between him. I still think,
Garrett.
And Myles Garrett. Yep.
So the other
Myles is crazy. So like, if anyone says anything bad about Myles, just at me the entire draft season. That dude is nuts. I had some issues with him heading into this year, and it was basically like this dude's not as like if we were talking about like Vic Beasley not being able to hold up against the run. I didn't think he was impressive at all last year, Myles Garrett, and I also thought he relied on his speed a lot. And again, we're talking about a 20-year-old, right? We were talking about a 20-year-old at the time, so we're talking about a true sophomore who's playing. I mean, that dude's barely 20. He might have been 19. And he didn't really have a developed counter move. So, like, if he couldn't beat you with speed, he really had nothing. And I was like, I don't know if that goes top 5. But now this year, I remember watching him against that UCLA left tackle. And by all means, it seems like there's no left tackle in college football who's worth a first-round pick other than, like, maybe Cam Robinson. And even then, it's like you have to get over, like, a gun charge and, like, all sorts of things like that.
Ryan Ramczyk from Wisconsin.
See, I that's another guy who I haven't seen yet, so I don't really necessarily want to talk about him. But, like, he beat the crap out of Connor McDermott with like counter moves. There was a play where he goes outside, he goes outside, crashes the B gap down. So basically, he takes away the B gap entirely after trying an outside move and just shuts down the B gap. So he's taking account of 2 gaps instantly, right? And as he's shifting into the B gap, he's doing this like spin move, and out the corner of his eye with his back turned against the ball, he sees the running back, spins, and makes a tackle for a loss. And I was like, that's all I needed to see. I've never seen that before.
And I think
I've literally never seen that before.
Important to note too that as we've seen tweets that are down on Myles Garrett, he's been playing through a pretty bad ankle injury that he suffered in the Arkansas game.
Hey, he's a hell of an edge safety.
Yeah. So I mentioned Ryan Ramczyk. Wisconsin is going to be at Northwestern this weekend. That's a noon game. That's an early game, noon Eastern time. I'm actually going to be at that game live. So that's a game I want to mention just because I'll be there. I'll be looking at Ramczyk. I'll be looking at the Wisconsin linebackers. If Vince Beagle's playing, I think he is. TJ Watt, JJ Watt's brother.
Little Birdie's talking about JJ Watt's brother. I haven't seen him enough, but Little Birdie's
those linebackers
maybe
playing
not
well. Unfortunately, Jack Sitchy got hurt and is out, but those guys are playing well. They've got a cornerback named Tyndall, who's a junior. He's been playing really well. And then on Northwestern side, they've got Anthony Walker, a linebacker, and they have a receiver who's a walk-on and who had a big game against Ohio State last week, Austin Carr. So he looks like a slot receiver type. Those are the guys I'll be checking out in that early game. and I'll be there live. That's my first live college football game in probably about 4 years. So I'm excited to go.
The last game that really has a lot of intrigue is Ohio State and Nebraska.
Whoa! Kansas is playing West Virginia this week.
For anyone who has Fox Sports 12.
We've talked a lot about Ohio State's prospects this year, Justin. Does Nebraska have any draft eligible prospects we need to be watching this game?
Yeah, I think the intrigue here is last week, again, Austin Carr, the slot receiver projection from Northwestern, had a big game against Ohio State. He was getting open against their safeties. Malik Hooker is a guy that we've talked about highly on the show, and Ohio State was definitely playing the run and daring Northwestern to throw, and Northwestern was actually making the throws. So Ohio State's got a couple good corners, Gary Conley and Marshawn Lattimore, and Nebraska has some receivers, Jordan Westerkamp and Brandon Riley. I don't know if Alonzo Moore is healthy. He is a deep threat for them, but they've got at least two probably draftable or at least undrafted free agent type of receivers. Westerkamp in particular, I think, is the best receiver. And then Tommy Armstrong, I don't believe is a good college. I don't believe he's a draftable pro quarterback prospect.
No.
But what Tommy Armstrong is he's a mobile quarterback. He's an improviser, and he's a guy who's capable of buying time. And if he's able to make throws down the field, he throws a lot of passes deep. And if he's able to find those guys, if they're not able to get to Armstrong in the pass rush, he can throw a lot of 50-50 balls and let those receivers go get it. So it's really, I'm looking at I'm looking at Nebraska wide receivers against Ohio State's secondary in this game. And can Ohio State's pass rushers, can guys like Sam Hubbard and Tyquan Lewis, who haven't been getting a ton of pressure, can they get to the quarterback in this instance? This is the first really mobile quarterback they faced, and they struggled against that type of quarterback last year with more experienced defensive linemen, let's say.
I'm just because I'm a degenerate. I went on a site that has a college football schedule, but it also has lines on it. No one believes in this damn Nebraska team. For a team that's ranked top 10, no one believes in it. So they're 17-point underdogs against Ohio State. 2.5 hours later, Washington, California kicks off, and California, who a 4-4 team, not a 7-1 top 10 Nebraska team, is also 17-point dogs. And I'm gonna go ahead and guess that there's not much of a home field advantage out there in Berkeley.
Well,
that's huge.
So Nebraska is a 17-point dog at Ohio State. This is the Ohio State's third night game in 4 weeks. Their first one at home. They lost to Penn State. They had an overtime win against Wisconsin. Armstrong is so Ohio State.
No, Nebraska struggled with Oregon.
Yeah, and Ohio State really dominated Baker Mayfield, who's kind of, I guess, a lesser mobile but more accurate passing version of Tommy Armstrong. This is a game that could really turn. I think Ohio State could blow Nebraska out, but it's also one of those
after a loss, especially after a loss like that, right?
Yeah, and but Ohio State hasn't played well. They haven't really taken the reins and dominated anyone for 3 weeks. So their offense is kind of been in neutral. And the thing is, I don't think Nebraska has. One of the reasons people don't believe a lot in Nebraska is they don't have a lot of draftable guys on the defense. Nate Jerry, the safety, is the guy everyone looks to. But Ohio State, they haven't been able to throw downfield for weeks, so that's a big key. They have to make big plays early, get out in front. They can lean on their running game, and I do think Ohio State's defense can get after Armstrong and force turnovers. That's something that he's done a lot in his career when he's been pressured.
All right, guys, that's it from us tonight. Thank you, Justice, as always, for joining us. Justin, appreciate it. We'll be back next week. I don't know what we're going to cover. It'll be fun, though.
The presidential election.
No, I can promise you we won't talk about that.
Country will be gone by then, man. Country will be gone. We can't even say best in the nation. He's the best D in the nation. Ain't no nation. It's done.
If we're not back
So-
next week, you guys know why. And I just want to thank my Cleveland Indians for making a decent run. If this is it, at least I got to see a good try in the World Series.
All my sports teams suck, so it's fine. But yeah, we'll be back somewhere, some way. And thanks for listening. As always, check us out, iTunes and SoundCloud. And have a great night, everybody.